Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions or comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page. For episode 109, Applied Masonry. As usual, my name is John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in the academic land of Fairfax, Virginia. I will now introduce Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, everybody. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in the flowery state of Florida, Kissimmee. And I am the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Thank you, Juan. Nick Johnson, introduce yourself, please.
Certainly. Nick Johnson, past master, Corinthian Lodge number 67 in exceedingly rainy Farmington, Minnesota.
And a wet hello to you.
Oh.
Finally, last but not least, Jason Richards.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Jason Richards here, Senior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia.
Excellent, thank you. Robert is busy doing Masonic things, so he'll be back. But if you want to see him sooner than next week, join him and the rest of us this Saturday. That's right, the day is almost here at the PA Academy of Masonic Knowledge, where all five of us will be in town, if that town happens to be Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, where we have a wonderful event planned for you, where we have presentations from all five of us, an interactive panel. We've got some great things in work, a few surprises. You won't want to miss it. It's not too late to register. They're just looking for a head count. Again, we will remind you to register. Send an email to amksecretary@pagrandlodge.org. Send your name, address, lodge number, and telephone. And if you don't have a lodge, that's okay. Come along too. Bring at least $10 to help out pay for lunch. And maybe
bring more if you want to buy stuff from us.
We will have things that you will want. More than just us.
Yes, we're going to have some special folks there as well. We've got Brother Paul Chamberlain, past master, who's been on the show a couple times. It's been rumored that Charles Harper is going to be there. Those rumors are still unsubstantiated, but we can hope. We're going to have Edgar Gonzalez from Masonic Revival there for at least the morning, so it's going to be a lot of fun, a chance to go and meet some great people, none of whom will actually be up there speaking.
And dress as coat and tie, so make sure you, if you don't like it, go back to our dress code episode.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Juan or Nick?
If you're in the vicinity, don't skip this event. This is the one you don't want to skip. You want to be there. We're going to have a lot of fun, and there's going to be a lot of the things that we want and we came looking for in Masonry. You'll find them there.
You're going to get some knowledge dropped on you.
It is on.
It's going to be a lot more knowledge than, any area ritual schools that are taking place the same day.
Just saying.
There will be 0 minutes at the end of the presentation.
Excuse me.
Wow. So, let's talk about this week in Masonry. Holy smokes. Brethren, the floodgates are open. There has been a lot of responses to all the activities that have been going on lately. We're not going to belabor all the points. We covered that really last week with the suspending recognition episode. But a little bit of elaboration since our episode, but 1 week ago, Maine has chimed in. Maine has come out with a statement, really not leaning one way or the other as far as suspending recognition, but have at least come out formally and said that it is kind of against their code and morals, right? Right, Jason?
Yeah, well, it's a similar statement to the one made by California recently, and then by D.C. back last year.
Mm-hmm.
Just exhorting that Masonry is open to all good men of character.
Right. Also, let's go over to Mississippi. We talked about the pending resolution to their Grand Lodge where they were going to vote on a proposal to change their petition such that it would state that a member had to be born, or not born, continue to be a heterosexual male. So it would ban transgender or homosexual males from entering Masonry. But fortunately, the proposal did not have enough votes from the assembled brethren to even be sent to committee, and the proposal died on the floor.
And this is what Mississippi looked like as they were deciding. Right there. There you go. Nope, 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 nope. Not getting involved. Nope, 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 nope. Yeah.
The way I see it, it could be a. Let's assume the best, and that there were a lot of good-thinking brethren who definitely came out and voted against this thing and made sure that it was clear that this motion really wasn't going to pass. But it didn't hurt that also the past week there's been so much negative press against the Grand Lodges of Tennessee and Georgia that a little bit of public embarrassment goes a long way, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, it seems to be fractioning, or what would it be? Fracturing the faction that we were all assuming was going to exist. That the southern states would all join together, the northern states wouldn't, and then we'd have this big fight. But it seems like everybody's kind of going, yeah, I don't know if I want to get involved in any of this stuff, and it makes perfect sense. I wouldn't want to. I mean, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. So.
Yeah, it's been very interesting the lack of press over the past day or two, because for the first part of the week last week, it was every single day, multiple times a day, and the Grand Lodge of Tennessee and Grand Lodge of Georgia came out with their responses to the actions by the Grand Lodges of California and D.C. on the same day. That was also the same day that Maine weighed in as well, so there was a lot of stuff happening all at once, and then it's died down at least for a couple days.
So let's talk about real quick about the responses from Tennessee and Georgia. Starting with Georgia, theirs was short and sweet, had 5 bullet points, which basically can be summarized as: we're sovereign, it still stands, and we are not going to reciprocate pooling recognition. So you can ban us, but we're not going to ban you. Conversely, Tennessee has responded, also stating that it will stand. However, they did reciprocate the suspending recognition. Also kind of mixed in suspending fraternal relations, and so we've talked a little bit about the wording choice there. Kind of gets mixed up, but either way, Tennessee has reciprocated the pooling recognition for those who have pooled first, and Georgia stands by its issue, however, remains. Their doors are open for whomever.
It was interesting that they crouched the language in an argument of jurisdictional sovereignty. It brings me back to reading about the Civil War, where a lot of people still today say, no, it wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. And I feel like down the road, when this is all said and done, the same issue is going to persist, where they're going to be like, it really wasn't about homosexuality, it was really about Grand Lodge sovereignty. And right. That doesn't make it any better.
Yeah, thank you. That was my first reaction, which is, while everything was legally true, by Masonic law, everything that was written down by Georgia was legally true, that doesn't make it right. Just because something is legal doesn't make it ethical, doesn't make it morally right.
Especially when acted upon in an arbitrary manner.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about that at length. Any final words on this past week in Masonic recognition?
Who was it that said that the suspension, it wasn't a suspension of recognition, but that dignitaries or Grand Lodge officers, committee men, they were the ones that were not
Correct. That was Grand Lodge of D.C.
Okay.
understanding the difference between suspending total recognition and then they called it suspending fraternal relations,
Okay.
meaning we're not going to punish the brethren in our respective jurisdictions, but we will, and they did add a clarification point this week as well to say that also means that while our brethren can travel back and forth, you Grand Line officers cannot travel and sit in our lodges in D.C. So that was the one exemption that they made. Otherwise, they said we're going to handle this at the adult level. Just the adults are going to fight and not take it out on the kids. But
Stay together for the kids, man.
but you're still not allowed to come over on weekend. You're not leaving your toothbrush.
Nice.
Okay, let's move into.
We've beat that horse silly.
Yeah,
Let's move on.
Let's move over to the Masonic Monday question.
On Tuesday.
Oh boy. Well, you know what? I know we've had a bunch of weird questions. I've been moving into a new house. Well, my whole family has. It's not just me. But so it's been a little bit nuts. But now I'm back.
You're not allowed to leave your toothbrush, Nick.
No, I won't.
Stay there for the kids.
Oh, that's so sad sounding. Anyway, so this was we had the question before, which is about the Noahide laws, and I think Brother Jason hit it out of the park when he explained them a little bit. So we're going to skip on to the next one, which was the Masonic Monday question for the week of March 7th, 2016. And the question was concerning an elaborate ceremony involving a single peppercorn. The correct answer was Lodge St. George number 200 in Bermuda, the lodge itself holding a charter from the Grand Lodge of Scotland, which rents the old State House as its lodge building for the grand total of a single peppercorn, presented to the Governor of Bermuda on a velvet cushion atop a silver platter in an annual ceremony performed since 1816, 200 years. All right, so the correct answers were Christopher Croteau, Willem Cosin, Jason D. Wise, our own Jason Richards,
What?
Greg Duffy, I know, Jonathan Primo, Glenn Keeker, Steve Whitaker, Blake Miles Leach, Steve Higdon, David Sutherland, Ed Potter, Heath Erskine, David Klein, Joey Boyer, Josh Herbig, Matt Appel, or Apple, Dusty Piper, Christopher Fetko, Jeff Brockett, Alex Madsen, Heber Longhurst, Frank Scrobot, Daniel Navarro Wilson, and John Hill Eureka. And then we have a few that showed up a little bit later. Brent Webb. We have Mike Hambrecht. And we have Michael Laidlaw. So congratulations, guys, for answering the question correctly. And so on to the question for the week of March 14th, 2016. And your question is, of which two lodges in the country of France did Brother Benjamin Franklin serve as master? When you have the answer, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name, your lodge number, and the hashtag Daredevil2. Season 2 is coming out. You have to have the whole thing or you don't get credit. Daredevil Season 2 is coming out.
What happens if they post it on the Facebook page?
It won't.
I have to get my Charlie Cox fix. He's dreamy.
Back to you, John.
When is Daredevil 2 coming out?
The Friday we're in Pennsylvania.
So if you come early enough, we'll be just binge watching Daredevil 2.
I wish my wife will know if I'm watching it.
We're not allowed to live stream copyrighted content. All right.
Separate accounts, dude.
Yeah, it'll just be Mystery Science Theater 3000 of us commenting on what's going
on. Amazing.
Okay, let's move into this week's topic, Applied Masonry. And it would be my pleasure to let Juan Sepulveda kick us off because he truly is, amongst at least the four of us, the expert in the art of practicing applied masonry. Juan, take it away.
Thank you, John. I wouldn't go as far as saying expert, but this is something that is near and dear to my heart. Before I joined Masonry, I really wanted to make sure that I took my time, if given the opportunity to join the fraternity, so that I could listen to the lessons and, if possible, apply them to my life. And this is something that I think should be at the center of all our intentions when it comes to Masonry. There are a lot of different moving parts in the fraternity, and I understand that, but the very, very important one is that we come to Masonry to learn about these lessons, and we owe it to ourselves and to our family and to the people that come in contact with us that we are diligent in applying these lessons as best as we can. And as we go through the journey of life, we encounter a lot of opportunities and obstacles. And I find that the lessons that we find in Masonry, when taken seriously and when applied properly, can help mitigate some of those obstacles and give you an opportunity to really capitalize on the opportunities when they arise. And as proceed talking about the topic, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of these early lessons that we came across in Masonry, in the early degrees of Masonry. And we'll give you an idea of which ones of these were the most significant to us, and perhaps we can give you some examples of how we've successfully applied or how we have tried to apply some of these lessons into our own personal lives. So first I want to go around the panel and ask some of the questions like, what are some of the lessons that you found on the early degrees of Masonry, and please give us an example on how you attempted to apply them.
Okay, I'll start. You know, one example, we talked about this earlier, my favorite Masonic symbol is the point within a circle, or the circumpunct. And what I liked about that, upon reflection of it, and that's something you see right in one of the first degrees that you get, is it teaches you balance, it teaches you boundaries, right? Everything in life has boundaries, and you can think of that every day when you get stressed about your coworkers. That's something I need to continue to work on. How can I reel myself back in, not push the boundaries, not overstep my bounds, so I can keep things professional, keep things calm, keep things civil. We're taught to apply that boundary, that perimeter. And in fact, over time, you want to bring that perimeter in. You want to find a tighter balance. In other words, you don't want to have too many swings one way or the other. And so that's just one example of taking just one simple symbol out of the degrees, applying it to your daily life, thinking about how you can be a better person by bringing those boundaries in, being more reflective, being more centered. That's my 2 cents. Nick, what about you?
Sure. You know, for me, it's interesting. I spend a lot of time thinking of the ashlar. It's one of the earliest symbols in Masonry. It makes perfect sense because, in an operative sense, it is what a Mason does. They build that way. They do that way. They use stone. And the idea that instead of being the builder working on the stone, that you are yourself the stone, it really brings it home to the idea that everything that you're given in Masonry is to work on that particular rock that you've been thrown from the quarries. And you know, you'll have fissures and breaks and things you have to work around, but ultimately you find a way to use all the symbolic tools to get yourself forward, to work yourself into the rest of the community. And for me, it's not so much just working on the stone yourself, but working on your brother's stone, helping him out, him helping you out, ultimately trying to fit yourself within your own particular community.
I like that. I like that a lot. Especially when you talk about you working on your own stone and helping brothers in working on theirs. How many times have we been in lodge and we talk about a symbol and a brother gives an example of how that symbol could help him in his personal life? I don't think I've seen that before. I think it would be ideal if we approached it like a guild. And I'm thinking in particular like a painters guild. You had some people that were really good at painting angels or cherubims, and you had other people that were magnificent at doing great landscapes in their paintings. So inside of un taller, or the actual, I'm saying guild, but I don't think that's the right word. The Where all the craftsmen get together to work. They would work on on their specialties, but also help one another develop their techniques so that they could all improve upon their weaknesses.
And that's actually a really good point, because the concept of the trademark would be applied by a guild, and each guild would have its own trademark, and the guild itself would make sure that each piece of work being created is being created to the specific qualifications within that organization. So it is the idea that not only are you working on these things by yourself, but you're also having to make sure that you are within the community, making sure that you're worthy of that trademark. And so I think it makes perfect sense. I think the guild concept is exactly how we should think of Masonry as it is applied to our own lives.
Very nice. How about you, Jason?
So I've got the obvious answer, and then I've got the not so obvious answer. And the obvious answer is one of my favorite symbols, which is the 24-inch gauge, because I'm all about trying to make sure that I'm giving my time, splitting it up evenly amongst my various obligations. But there's another part of the lecture in the first degree that has to deal with kind of the initiatic experience of Masonry. You're talking about, at a point where you're not able to see anything around you or know if there's danger, you've got a brother you're trusting in to lead you to where you need to go. And I just see that as kind of the quintessential essence of Masonic mentorship. It's building up your brethren and helping them move forward in their lives when they just can't even see their hand in front of their face. And that's what I really try to do. And that had just left an impression on me from the very first degree.
Wow. Yeah, that's beautiful. If you think about that, having someone who doesn't even understand the perils that surround him. You have someone who perhaps has gone through it before and is leading the way, and if you put your hand on his shoulder, he can guide you through those obstacles in a safe way.
Yeah, that reminds me of a quote that I've grown to like. It's actually a combination of two quotes. One of them is, every person you meet has a struggle that you don't know about. And conversely, every person you will ever meet knows something that you don't.
I know who that was.
Be willing to listen. Who was that?
Bill Nye.
Was it really?
It is. One of my heroes.
He's not a real scientist, but we won't let that him.
He wears bow ties. It's okay.
No, but it's. I was gonna tell you something about that whole helping one another, but when I'll catch my train of thought, because you had a specific thing tied to it. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, it is understood that when you join Masonry, you're very excited. You're giddy about all the things that you're being presented with, and you cannot wait for the next step. And although we do admire that zeal, and we encourage people to have that excitement for as long as you can keep it, it is a disservice that you do to yourself if you rush through the lessons that are given you. And I remember now what my point is that I didn't give you what my tool was. but for the sake of continuity, let's keep on moving through. What would you say is some of the perils of giving way to that zeal and not really pacing yourself and taking the time necessary to appropriately learn and effectively apply the lessons that you find in the initial degrees?
Burnout.
Nick can't answer this. He has a petition addiction.
I mean, burnout is a huge thing. You get your third degree, you're super stoked, you're super excited, and then that first brother comes up to congratulate you, and you think he's given you his hand, and there's a petition in that hand. And he's like, congratulations. Now you can become a real Mason, join the Scottish Rite. Or the York Rite.
Or the
Don't you
shrine.
want to have fun? Don't you want to have fun?
Join the shrine.
We drive little cars and freak out kids with clown costumes. That's cool. And before you know it, you're paying several $100s in dues to all of these organizations. You're out 7 nights a week, and you forget what your family looks like. And so, if you burn too fast and too hard, you're going to burn out. You're going to get tired. You're going to stop going to everything, and it might end up becoming the death of your Masonic experience.
I'll add to that and say, I wish someone had told me. So if you are an EA or you're just getting initiated, I wish someone had told me then that there's so much to learn just about the EA degree. That I was just like everyone else, ready to move on to the next one, get my third degree. Let me sit in lodge. Let me be a full-on Mason. No, you're a Mason when you're an entered apprentice. And if you want an example of how much there is to study, even on the EA degree, the entered apprentice degree, go get Anthony Mangelli's book. We've had him on the show. He has a book or two, I believe, on the symbols of the entered apprentice degree, and goes into great detail of the ancient mysteries that these things are tied to and where they're woven through the fabric of history. And this is literally the very first step of Masonry, and you don't have to be a fellow craft, to get it. As long as you have gone through the initiatic experience of an entered apprentice, you can study and learn so much that again, rushing through would actually do yourself a disservice. But again, no one told me that okay, you get your EA degree, you study your catechism, you move on. I didn't know there's so much educational opportunities just on what I was taught on that first step.
One thing that I was told early on when I joined Masonry, a brother came to me and he said, because I expressed my concern, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't rushing through. I feel very fortunate that I had that foresight initially, due to some good advice that I received. But he said, don't be afraid to hold your worshipful master to the things that you expect from Masonry. So he told me, what is it that you're looking for? Demand that from your worshipful master. And granted, the worshipful master has a ton of things to worry about. There's a lot of the fiscal problems that have to be dealt with, a lot of the social and the business of the lodge is something that I understand it's very difficult to handle. But if he is there to help you in that journey towards the east, you can demand of him a little bit more from the things that you came into Masonry looking for. For example, I've seen this time and time and again. Whenever they are going through the checklist and trying to, okay, for Masonic education, when it's time to talk about Masonic education within the meeting, they'll point to something else that was talked about very briefly at the opening, and let's count that as the Masonic education. How are we supposed to really get anything from that meeting? If we want brothers to come back to the meetings, there are plenty of talented brothers that could give a speech or give a presentation, show something. Even someone who is not experienced in speaking in public could read a paper just from their seat and help the brothers learn something every day. So if that's what you want from your lodge, don't be afraid to ask for it. Now, Nick, can you think of any other perils of rushing through?
Well, and it's actually interesting as somebody who's got a George Costanza wallet because I can't say no, and that's actually the biggest thing is the peril is not saying no, because a lot of brothers, I totally get it. As somebody who's been in charge of enough appendant bodies to see it, the burnout rate is very high in the appendant bodies, just because for obvious reasons it's more time and our time is limited now. And so you have a struggle there with guys who they want to do the work, but they don't have the time to do the work. And I sometimes wonder if, at least in an American sense, America, we like our stuff, right? We're very consumer driven, and that includes Masonry. So we'll have bigger, better, more, and that's fine. But I think at the same time, pace yourself. I've been fortunate in the way in which I've viewed Masonry is that I took a long time to join stuff. I didn't just jump right into it, and that's the biggest thing is you have to be willing to say no or say not right now. And so when I joined the York Rite, I had already been a Mason for almost 6 years, or yeah, about 5 or 6 years before I even joined the York Rite. And even then, it was very piecemeal. The reason I went with York Rite instead of Scottish Rite was because it is piecemeal. So it was one of those that I could join chapter, add that into my docket of things to do, then add council, add that to my docket of things to do, then commandery, then the invitational body showed up and kind of screwed all that up. But that's neither here nor there. But it's one of those that you don't have. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon with all this stuff. So you're going to learn this stuff, and then remember that the appendant bodies themselves are they're supplementary, the supplemental and complementary to. I was trying to make a new word, supplementary. So that's my new one. Even though that is a word. Anyway, so it's one of those that you can couple this in a way that says that you can get all this knowledge, you can build it up, but always keep an eye on those first 3 degrees. And I would actually say the first degree, always put that as number 1, because that's not just your entrance into Masonry, but anybody who's heard the lecture for it knows that it's pretty much the meatiest lecture of all of them. And that one's going to pretty much design and define everything that you're going to be learning later on. So focus on the EA, build it up into the FC, and then I'm using all these government acronyms. So focus on entered apprentice first. That's always going to be your base, and then from there you can move on. But it's not a sprint; it's a marathon. Build your own spiritual temple slowly, because if you don't, the mortar is not going to be set, and the whole dang thing is going to come crashing down.
That is a perfect explanation, and for the brothers that are listening to the show or watching the show who are going to join us in Pennsylvania, you will hear a little bit more about this. My presentation is called The Faulty Foundation, and it has to do strictly about this. And if you think about the building of your Masonic experience as constructing a beautiful edifice, it does not matter how tall you make it, how beautiful and ornate, and what schools of architecture you're borrowing from. If your foundation is not of the right caliber, if it's not strong enough to support all the other things, like Nick said, everything would just come crashing down. So I don't think it's too late unless you're a member of everything. It's going to be very difficult for you to backpedal and say, okay, I'm not doing anything. All I'm doing is enter an apprentice degree. But
just demit and then join again later.
Demit all the things.
All the things.
Get that life membership. You get the card. You can just ignore the emails.
Make it rain dues cards. Here we go.
Put a filter on your email.
That's what the
Breakfast
junk
spam.
folder is for.
Yeah. But it's true. If you focus on doing that, just think of the practicality of it. Going back to the 24-inch gauge, as Jason mentioned, it is essential to our lives, our personal lives, our careers, and our family life for us to be mindful of the scarcity of time. This is something that I struggle with, and it's a family thing. Like, this is a genetic curse. Most of you brothers don't know it, but I'm gonna give you a secret about TMR that you don't know about. Nick and I show up last minute every meeting.
It's true. It really is.
Yeah, I'm in my mind.
It may or may not stress John the hell out.
Children.
I'm a
That's all I have to
adult.
say.
I'm sorry.
Children.
I know it does. There's something in addition to the children that makes it difficult for me to really compartmentalize my time and think of it in an efficient way. So I'm always working on it. I'm always working on trying to give myself enough time, plan correctly, and I'm always feel like I'm still struggling with it. But just think how essential that time management is. That it's essential for almost every aspect of your life. If you focus on getting better control over that, then you have a little bit more time perhaps to dedicate to the application of other lessons. And I would encourage brothers to go to the Winding Stairs episode that I had on habits. I'll share with you in the later on. I can't remember the number of the episode, but I talk about the importance of being able to manage your time correctly, because your patience is dragged into that. Like, if you don't sleep enough, if you don't dedicate enough time to your own self, then you are an ogre to everybody around you. You get hangry because you didn't plan your meals right? I'm not alone in here, right? So that's one of the important things about paying attention to those fundamental lessons in Freemasonry. Now, now that we have a little bit of a lull, I wanted to mention very briefly the tool or the lesson that I initially was most impacted by, and it was the compasses. Although I'm pleasant on the majority of the public time, I'm nice to people. I try to be patient. I have a character, and these brothers here, because they spend a lot of time with me, they know I can be a little difficult sometimes. But this is something that it was important for me to know that I had to circumscribe my passions. And for example, not too long ago, I went to an event. This was not a Masonic event, and somebody approached me and asked me to remove a piece of jewelry that I had. Yeah, my nose ring. No, somebody came and asked me to remove something from my person, and they had a specific reason for it. But my initial reaction was a challenging one. I didn't become belligerent, but I was very stern in my response to them that I had no intention of removing it, and that if it was demanded of me to remove it, we had to go together around the whole room and ask everybody to remove it. Perhaps the way in which I had handled myself in front of them in the past, given the impression that I was more subdued of an individual. Now, after the fact, once he explained why he was asking me this, and I understood his rationale, I obliged, I removed it. But afterwards, I felt so bad that my reaction was so visceral. My reaction was very intimidating, I would say, and he didn't expect my reaction to be like that. And I toiled with it for a few days, and I reached out to him and I apologized. I told him, listen, it was out of place for me to react in such a way. I overreacted, and I hope that you can forgive me for it. So if I had been at a better moment in my life and I had paid more attention to circumscribing my passions, perhaps my reaction to that man would not have been as strident as it was. And that's the importance of keeping an eye on these tools, these lessons, so that when the moment comes, you're better prepared to react to the obstacles or circumstances. And now, question again to you. Can you suggest, since this is something that we tend to forget, for example, we could have had a time management book in our hands, got a very good grasp of the 24-inch gauge and got better at it, but then slowly but surely relaxed a little, started dropping the ball, not on top of the game. What would you suggest for brothers in order for them to keep these lessons present and refresh their minds so that they could actually implement these lessons in their daily lives? John.
So I'll start. One thing I wanted to share is, and we talked a little bit about this in an earlier episode, where, let me screen share here, Benjamin Franklin in his autobiography had a listing of his 13 virtues that he tried to uphold himself to every day. And one would ask, how would Ben Franklin try to hold himself accountable to these 13 virtues that you see here? And if you want to replace them with some of the Masonic virtues that you're taught, go right ahead. What he did was do a little spreadsheet, a matrix. This is before Excel came out, before Google Sheets. He had just a grid of every day of the week across the top. Every column was listed Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and down the
rows
were the 13 virtues, and every day he would mark, did he accomplish meeting that virtue? And there are apps out there that are in the App Store to accomplish the same thing, to help keep track and send you reminders to say, how did you do today? And that's a very simple way. You have to build the habit of logging that time, either in the morning or at night. Once you do, it's a visual reminder of how you are progressing along that journey. Another thing I wanted to share related to that, before I transition over, Nick, you had a question?
Yeah, so those dots are when they actually did it, or when they didn't? When Ben would do it or not?
When he didn't.
When he did not.
Did not.
Oh. Okay, because the chastity one is blank. I was just wondering about that. Moving on.
Yeah.
Well, the thing too is that he would tackle one of the virtues per week. So the chastity, he hasn't gotten to chastity on this example, for example. I don't know if that's his personal.
Yeah, and that is correct. In some other descriptions, other versions of this, he lists it at the top. You can see here it says temperance at the top, and so that is kind of the primary goal of the week. Trying to do 13 things is not as effective as trying to do one thing well. Another thing related, I found value in building a time map, and we talked about time maps in our balance episode, and we said we were going to share it, and I never got around to it. Here it is for those watching on YouTube. It's just as simple as writing down the time in a column from 0000 in the morning to 2300 at night, and every hour account for your time. What are you doing during that time, or what do you think you should be doing? And then the next thing is make sure that you stick to that schedule. Make sure you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Make sure that you spend time with your normal vocations. Make sure you set aside time for TMR. That's
Please.
Right. But you can see that's it's something that helps you lay out in a visual way an accountable aspect of your time, and so you should be focusing on those different areas of your life, and not trying to multitask and not showing up late for TMR, Juan and Nick. Make sure you account for those times, and it helps. It's not great. Their life is going to get in the way. The kids are not going to go to bed early. That you're going to have something come up. You have to stay late at work, but this is a guide to help you align your current balance that you're trying to accomplish. So these are little tools I found that have helped me, and hopefully they help you.
Now, I wanted to mention what you said about it being a guide and something to help you. It's almost as if you were following a map. You have a way to go from here to there, but you might want to take either a slightly different route, or a circumstance happens and you have to make a diversion, but you want to come back into the original trajectory so you can get there. Even David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, I've heard him talk about the fact that people think that he is perfect when it comes to his scheduling and his management of time. He said, no, this is something that ebbs and flows. You will notice those moments where you are on point, where you are hitting on every cylinder and you're making everything happen the right way. But you'll feel that wane, and perhaps you start losing a little bit of control, and you need that reminder to get back on track. How about you, Nick? You have anything?
For at least to keep a mindfulness of Masonic teaching, considering that I do too much of it, the biggest thing that I like to do is to really back away from Masonic subjects and try to find a way to look at something that isn't Masonic, and then after I'm all done with it, to find a way to work it back into my Masonic journey. A lot of the thing about Masonry is the way it was developed, ritualistically at least, was people like Preston and them, William Preston, would take best ideas from someplace else, and he would add that into the Masonic lectures that he was writing. So for me, one of the ideas that I've always had is to take more foreign ideas, things that aren't found within any Masonic lecture, and find a way to make them work together with what we're already learning. So it's not just that we hear something from Shakespeare, but other things from Shakespeare. It's to be or not to be, to understand what it is to be a Mason. To understand how the suffering works within the Master Mason degree. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it kind of fails, but it's a really nice way of trying to find the Masonry in everything that we do, all our interactions and all the things that we see. That's something that I've always, to create the mindfulness aspect of Masonry.
Very nice. Jason?
So, it's a lot easier if you do something with a partner. One of the things that I find helps me a whole lot is just spending some time to talk about my life and Masonry and the things that I've learned in the fraternity with a good partner. So just having, I would encourage everyone to go out and find a good friend in Masonry to be your Masonic accountability partner, in the sense of really sharpening each other on what your favorite lessons are, how you're trying to apply those. And that's a really, really great way for brethren to keep each other accountable and to ensure that they're taking steps to grow themselves into better men, better family men, and better citizens. I think that's the best thing that someone can do, short of journaling it, writing it down, checking off calendar stuff, that sort of thing.
That's very good. Do we have anything on social media regarding the topic?
We do. Moving over to social media, we've got something from Brother Chris Streeper, who was not able to join us tonight, but said he wanted to make a point that to properly apply Masonry, it must actually become a lifestyle. In order to be a true practitioner of the craft, one must remember that Masonry is not simply about wearing a ring, carrying a dues card, but making the words of your obligations actionable daily in all aspects of life. One cannot simply pick up Masonry when it's convenient. You're a Mason every day, all day, even when nobody else is looking, and that in and of itself is applied Masonry.
I love it.
We've also got another thought from Brother Matthew Dubrow. Says, among other things, I apply Masonry every day by focusing on the 4 cardinal virtues, temperance, fortitude, prudence, and justice. Also focusing on the 24-inch gauge and what the delineation of time unfolding the ringlets of her hair on the broken column denotes.
Wow.
It gets back to remembering that you only have a certain period of time on this earth to do good. And so you need to remember daily to make use of it as best you can. And Mike Hambrick said he's going to bring his Apple TV to Elizabethtown so we can all watch Daredevil with him in his hotel room. He also says the most important thing for him is to remember that the tools are a guide, which means they're not rigid or unyielding. They're meant to be applied and molded to fit your life. Remember to accept from yourself those times where you don't meet the things that you've tried to schedule, your obligations, or you forget to circumscribe your passions. It's all about just coming back the next day and trying to do better. It really is a sanctification process.
Agreed.
And those are the high points of social media tonight, guys.
You guys knocked it out of the park.
Yeah,
Very good.
great discussion.
Okay, let's start wrapping this thing up then. Let's start with Nick to bring us home.
Sure. It's interesting after participating and seeing all the different degrees that I've been a part of. The idea of applied Masonry, especially in a speculative sense, is to constantly have to view the symbols in their original intent of operative Masonry. So, for me, it's one of those that I've actually part of. We have a program in Minnesota called the Masonic Light Program. It comes with an award, and one of the things on it is the carving of a soapstone, and so they actually ask you to participate in the carving and shaping of something made of stone. And I've played around with it. I had some soapstone that I played with, and it was fascinating to feel that work in your hand. And then I started to look at it again, and I was thinking about that stone is me, and the creator is obvious, at least in our minds. And it's just interesting to understand that we're being shaped in so many different ways. And the tools themselves, as long as you understand how they work, as long as you understand why a compass circumscribes, why a square squares, you really get a lot out of Masonry. And I really think it's something that unfortunately kind of gets lost in the degree of work and kind of gets lost in how we're rushing through and trying to get guys to join a million different things. But it's really one of those that my biggest suggestion to anyone is to start off with an operative concept of it. Grab the actual tools. I mean, some of you actually will get those tools. Play around with them. Feel what they feel like, and try something out. It definitely gives you a different perspective on why we say the things that we say. So with that, I have a blog, millennialfreemason.com, and thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Jason.
Ooh, going out of order tonight. Wow.
I like it.
So, applied masonry, you learn so much in each of the 3 degrees of craft masonry. There's so much to pick at. There is so much to um, really ruminate upon and let simmer on how you can build yourself and your brethren up into being better people. And I think applying that and getting into the practice of applying that is what separates the men who kind of just join the fraternity for the hoorah-rah of camaraderie, and those that really take the initiatic experience and the esoteric philosophical, there we go, nature of the fraternity to heart. So, take that extra step, set, maybe 5 or 10 minutes aside a day just to think about things, and you'll be surprised at how much you'll remember, and how you'll be able to see, I think, some really great results if you do this, day in and day out. And you're going to have different thoughts and different outcomes than your brother or anyone else, because Masonry is an inherently personal journey. It's an inherently personal application, and you're going to apply Masonry in a very different way than your brother sitting next to you in lodge. And come see us in Pennsylvania. It'll be amazing.
Just a few more days.
I know.
Juan?
It's gonna be a lot of fun. Okay, I want brothers to think about this. Imagine that in your respective profession, you are giving the tools that you need in order to fulfill your job duties. But this is the first time that you've ever seen these tools. Just knowing what these tools are for. Let's say if you're a carpenter, just knowing what a what a saw is, or what a sander is, just knowing what they are is not enough. If you really want to hone your craft and become a master at it, you need to really spend the time utilizing those tools. Coming across difficulties or problems that can only be solved with specific tools. And then spend the time to really fix those problems utilizing those tools. The same thing goes with philosophy, religion, and even Freemasonry. Just knowing what these concepts are is not enough. In order for you to become the ultimate expression of the Creator, in order for you to become that ultimate work of art, all of those tools need to be familiar to you, and they need to be utilized at the right time to solve the right problems in order to really bring you to that ultimate version of yourself. So I encourage brothers to not just learn what these tools are, but hold yourself accountable to learning how to implement them, and try to take pride in the actual implementation of them in the perfection of your ashlar. Brothers, I encourage you to listen to The Winding Stairs. Is a Freemasonry podcast. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher, everywhere major podcasts are offered. And to see some of my works of art, I've taken some time to learn what to do with the brush and the pencil, and you can see the evidence of that if you go to freemasonryart.com. And today and tomorrow, the last 2 days, for you to get a mystery print. Every order that you place on freemasonryart.com, this ends on the 16th of March at 11:59 p.m. Place an order, and I'm going to include a mystery print. So it's a nice treat. Just go to freemasonryart.com. Thank you, brothers.
Thank you, Juan. Rounding things out, let's see. One way to apply Masonry is to continually apply Masonry. We've talked about building the power of habit before in the show, and how when you habitually do something, it becomes part of you, it becomes part of your nature, and it is a constant reminder to be better. I like to relate this back to Scripture as well. As a Christian, you want to, as you reflect and meditate on Scripture and how it sharpens the mind and soul, the contextual awareness of the moral lessons of the degrees taught in Masonry will make us at least 1% better every day. So I encourage each of you to think hard, apply what you're taught, and that's the key thing. It's an incremental change. It's 1% better every day, and that's a concept of incremental change called Kaizen in a Japanese context. But be the best you can be, but do it one day at a time. With that, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you Saturday, and stay tuned. We will be sharing the Hangout links or the YouTube links on theMasonicRoundtable.com very shortly.
And they're already up.
They're already up.
So go to the MasonicRoundtable.com. You will see the show page for the Masonic Academy, and we will have 2 Hangout links. We'll have one for the morning sessions and then one for the afternoon.
How's that for efficiency?
Boom.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.